So welcome back this week to my channel. You can see I'm camping. I'm in my RV this week. I'm not at home. So bear with me because I didn't expect that it was going to be in the high 80s today filming this video. It's actually going to be cooler tomorrow, but there's no way I'm going to have it done in time if I don't actually film it today. I have my microphone here as close as I can to my voice because I have to have the fans on. I have a fan over there that's pretty noisy and I can't help that, and I have a fan above me as well because my dog Muffin is right here. She's just poking up her head right now, so she's really hot, and it's in the middle of the day, and in order for me to get this video done for you for Sunday, gotta get it done today. This is a Bible study channel in addition to some other things that I want to try to do here related to God and living a godly way. My name is Lydia and I'm your Bible study teacher, and we have just completed the study of Genesis. Bible study, we left off with the book of Genesis while we had just completed, and I had told you that we were going to move into Exodus, and before that I was going to get into the book of Enoch, which I thought was going to give me some information as to why so many bad things happened between that 400-year span between Pharaoh and Joseph, and then the new Pharaoh, and so many wicked things that started coming upon the planet. And not just that, but also so many wicked things that were coming on the planet before that, in that 1,000-year reign right before the flood. So I thought that I would go into the book of Enoch and look for some answers. Although I wanted to get into the book of Enoch this week, I started doing extensive research on it, and I've just been fascinated by this book with so many things, and I found some great commentary, and it's just taken me a long time to put it all together for you. There's a fly, and I wanted to put it all together for you, so I'm going to hold off on that study for right now, but I'm going to give you some briefings as to why I want to include it here. I am going to give you a brief description of Enoch in the book of Enoch, and why I think that we have to study it a little bit further, and let me get into that. I don't expect you guys to read it all. It's long, it's lengthy, some of it is a little bit confusing because of the translations in it. It's a long book. It's I think it's 105 pages, I think it was, in my Kindle. It's actually 5 books. We'll talk about that when I give you more explanation about the book. But I just want to explain to you why I think it's important that we need to read this book. I have some notes here that I'm going to read off of because I haven't had a chance to prepare very well because of all the stuff that I'm doing here. But there are things that the Bible does not explain about condemned, oppressing spirits over nations and regions and why they exist. But the Bible only tells us that they do. But the Bible doesn't tell us why these things exist. I think that is key for us to understand. When you don't have the why to certain things, people start to question. And this might be why a lot of people question the Bible and question God, because they hear all of these things. But there's no book that's telling us the why, and the why is in the book of Enoch. But we also need to know where these oppressing spirits come from and who they are, which is what I'm trying to say right now. It's very important that we know this, have this information. Some religions teach humans that they have no immortal souls that live after death, but there is ample evidence of this in the New Testament. In the book of Enoch, no one can dispute the clear and numerous statements of this. And as I've been reading the book of Enoch, I've been noticing so many of the whys in there that I didn't know of before, and why the Bible talks so much about spirits and demons and Satan and evil and wickedness and killing the Canaanites and killing the Amorites and all of this stuff that's happening. And the book of Enoch is a book that explains it further to me. I'll just give you a little information. We can go through it on my study of it, but it says, I have some notes here. It says the book of Enoch was once accepted by Jews and Christians as an authentic book, even to a level of scripture, because Jude quotes from it in 1:9. Christ approved of the book in Luke 9:35 when he mentions the elect ones, and in the book of Enoch the elect ones is mentioned there very often. It's actually found in the book of Enoch 14 times, and Jesus mentions that in the New Testament. Other books that refer are the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, the book of Jubilees, and the epistle of Barnabas quoted it twice. When you have all of this information relating to a book that's been removed, you're going to want to question and know why this book was removed. Though it was a respected book back in the 4th century, it fell into disarray among some powerful theologians and therefore banned by the Council of Laodicea. Because it dealt with the nature of deeds of the fallen angels, it infuriated the church followers, especially Philastrius, who condemned it openly as heresy. Also, Rabbi Simeon ben Jakkai in the 2nd century AD pronounced a curse on those who believed in it. So it was denounced, banned, cursed, burned, shredded, and forgotten for 1,000 years. 2 centuries ago, it returned into circulation. In 1773, explorer James Bruce in Ethiopia found that it was an esteemed book in the Ethiopian church alongside the Bible. Translated by Dr. Richard Lawrence and published in 1821, he was a Hebrew professor at Oxford. There are key concepts in Enoch found in the New Testaments, like the Son of Man, paradise, judgment, the elect one, hell, and under fire. There are so many similarities were found in Enoch that it was alleged it was written by Christians. Later, 7 different Enochian manuscripts were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran Cave number 4. Scholars believe the Book of Enoch, written during the 2nd or 3rd century BC, there was no proof because we only have copies of translations from other languages. There's 5 books in the Book of Enoch. There's the first book, which is the Book of Watchers, and that's really an exciting book because it tells you a lot about the spirits, the fallen angels, and all the things that happen. It brings us to the account of the flood. It talks about the tribulation that's coming in the future, the prophecies, and all of these things that were later talked about in Revelation. The second book is the similitudes of the parables. The third book was the astronomical book. This gives you another explanation of the stars and the moon and all of these different things that were very important back in the day, and the reason for the seasons and the laws and the angels and their job and the natural laws of God. Book number 4 were the dreams and visions, and book number 5, the epistles of Enoch. Then there's some others which were the other fragments that were also found, but those are considered questionable. Enoch contains no hint of the law of Moses, so because it doesn't have the law of Moses in it, and now we're going to get to Exodus, written by Moses. It indicates that it was written before the law. Enoch was the 7th descendant of Adam, and probably knew him after all. Adam lived 930 years, so Enoch would have known Adam. Enoch's writings were passed from generation to generation. Enoch was around 300 years before Adam died, so for 300 years they had to have known of each other. They had to, because they were within the same family. So in Hebrews 11:5-6, and we'll read that in a second, there's information of that. It was later translated to English in 1821, the Book of Enoch, and then it was revised in I think it says, my writing is off, it says 1883, which is the one that I think that I read, because it's written like it's written in English, not in the Old English. That's the one that I have. I have a digital copy on my tablet, and I think I paid 99 cents for it on Kindle, which is a really cheap Kindle book. You can get it on your phone for 99 cents. It's not a lot of money if you wanted to skim through it. I am taking extensive notes on it because I did find a lot of commentary on it, and I thought that it was profound, and I decided that I'm going to wait and a little bit further before I get into it. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about it. So Enoch prophesies from dreams and visions the one of the end of the age in which he lived, which was coming with Noah's flood, and also the next age and everything in between. So he was very prophetic. He had a lot of things that made sense. There were things that were just happening in Revelation and things that were happening with the flood, and he made a lot of sense. He also spoke of fallen angels, hell, the coming of Christ, the Bible, and the millennial age. The time of great tribulation is also mentioned in Daniel, Matthew, and Revelation. So as we talked last week, there is the book of Genesis, right now, before we get to Exodus, in the timeline, like I showed you in my last video, and I'll post it here, there should be the book of Job here. But before, if the book of Enoch was allowed in the Bible, it would be Genesis, the book of Enoch, the book of Job, and then you would get to Exodus. So that would be in a timeline of events. That's where that book would be. That's why it's important for us to at least know what happened, why there were demons, why there was Satan, why there were fallen spirits, why there was all this stuff. We need to know the why, because if you don't have the why, you're not going to believe that there is going to be another place for you after you die. And we look in Genesis, there was a prophecy that was made there that the flood was going to happen when Methuselah died. So once Methuselah died, that's when the flood happened. That was a prophecy that was given in the Bible in Genesis, and that's exactly what happened. So we know that Enoch talked about all of this stuff, because if you read the first book of Enoch, it talks a lot about all of the stuff that was happening. But anyway, let's get to Exodus this week. So the book of Exodus was written by Moses between the time of 1450 and 1410 BC, before Christ. So I'm reading from my notes here. Moses, which is the writer, they're saying that the book was written by Moses, means I lifted him out of the water. That's what the meaning of the word Moses means. This is the story of the deliverance from Egypt and the development of the Israel nation, and it records those events of Israel's deliverance from Egypt. Those are the records that we're going to read here about what happened to the Israelites. All right, with that said, let's get to verse number 1 in Exodus, and we'll do one chapter and call it early, because I have to edit this video and get it out to you in time, and then I have more time to study and get more chapters in for you for next week. All right, number 1. Now, these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Okay, this word now tells us that this is the part where Genesis and Exodus meet, like we said, with the tribes' migration in Egypt. If you remember back in the last chapter, we left off that God wanted them to be fruitful in the land of Goshen. That's why he separated them from the Egyptians. He put them over in Goshen, and because of Joseph, they were allowed to do that. So, and now in this story, they've been there, and in this story, basically Joseph is dead, and that whole generation dies, but we have a lot of the Israelites that have multiplied. Continuity, it's the continuity between the two chapters and the explanation of how they were all blessed, because Joseph listened to God speaking through Pharaoh's dreams, and he was able to see all good things that were coming in the future. And that's the reason that we are here now in this plan of God. Number 2, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, and all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already, and Joseph died, and all his brethren, all that generation. Number 7, and the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. From my notes now, this family started with 5 people, and back in Haran, which started with Jacob, Rachel, Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah. These were the concubines of Isaac. And blessed by God, the family grew to become the actual tribes and the Israelites. Number 8, now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. At this point, Joseph had already passed away, and all of the generation of his family as well, like we talked about. The Egyptians worshipped many gods, and the Israelites still only worshipped one God. Verse number 9, and he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. This is the king talking now. Egyptians were famous, they were proud, they were racially felt superior to the Israelites and all the other people that were around them. But they discriminated against this strong minority group which was in the midst of them, and they were starting to feel threatened with this minority group that was starting to become the majority. That's because God was blessing them. Number 10, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. The Egyptians, what they feared was invasions from the Hittites. And these were at the north of their location. So they thought that if the Hebrews joined the Hittites, they could pose a significant threat against them. So what he did was he made them slaves to suppress them, to kill their spirits, and to stop their growth. And this we're going to read now. Verse 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramesses. This is from my notes. Many of the children of the Israelites were set to slave labor so that they can build the great cities and monuments in Egypt, but not the pyramids. They didn't build the pyramids, which were built earlier. Some people estimate that the slavery could have lasted 284 years. Slaves were also carpenters, jewelers, craftsmen. They worked in the mud pits. They were watched with supervisors. It would make their lives very miserable if they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Number 12, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. The types of abuses that they endured were people that watched over them with whips. These were heavy whips, and they also had staffs in their hands that they would use to beat the slaves. So it was pretty cruel, the tactics that they used back then. The nation of Israelites, I'm reading from my notes, couldn't grow in Canaan because it was impossible to avoid intermarriage in Canaan with the pagan and the wicked inhabitants of Canaan. But because Egypt was racially biased, and because of this racial separation, the Israelites could grow there over several centuries without being assimilated with others in the land of Goshen. So the reason that they were able to expand so greatly in Goshen was because they were pushed away. They couldn't commingle with the Egyptians. They were moved out, and they were able to have their own nation. But in Canaan, they wouldn't do that because they were allowed to intermingle, and that's not what God wanted. God didn't want these wicked people. And in the book of Enoch, it talks a lot about the wicked people of the past. And that would give you some answers as to the Canaanites and the things that were happening on earth. Verse number 13, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. Verse number 14, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all the manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. So Pharaoh didn't want to kill them, but he was an opportunist, and he wanted to use them to be slaves. And these people must have felt really helpless during that time, during this harsh and cruel service that they were commanded under Pharaoh to endure. But little did they know that God had a plan and was getting ready to move them out. God was working behind the scenes for them. 15, and the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. I'm reading from my notes, and Puah were probably the leaders of some of the associated midwives back in the time. They were kind of like the leading midwives, where the others held jurisdiction under them. So that's why he talked to them first. Verse number 16, and he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him, but if it be a daughter, then she shall live. So here is the consistent plan of Satan against the Jews, and the hatred over the centuries to attack God's Messiah, and the plan for the redemption coming through the Messiah, which was the seed of the woman. So he was going to come through the children of Israel, and this is why they tried to destroy a nation, ordering the killing of the male babies. And you'll see that happening again. And this is not just going to happen now. This is going to happen again in the future. Verse number 17. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men, children alive. These Hebrew midwives feared God more than they feared Pharaoh. Verse number 18. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, Why have ye done this thing and have saved the men, children alive? Now he wants to know why they haven't been doing what he told them to do. So from my notes I wrote in Romans 13:1-5, it says, we are to call to obey the government and honor civic rules and civic rulers. But if our government tells us to do something against God's will, we are not to obey. We are to obey God first. And that's exactly what they did here. And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Okay, so some people will speculate that these women were lying to Pharaoh, but we're not sure if that's actually the case, or whether these women birth really quickly and they're biologically prepared by God to withstand, deliver quickly, and they still refused to kill the children. Verse number 20. Therefore God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. So God is blessing in this verse their bravery and their obedience to God before men. Back in the time, I have wrote here in my notes that midwives were committed to helping babies and not to kill them. They were acting under the natural laws of God and the higher law of God, which forbids the senseless slaughter of innocent lives. Verse number 21. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And in this verse, from my notes, God obviously had won this battle because of courageous individuals who were willing to stand up to the power of Pharaoh and to do what was right, and God gave them the power for that. And because of this, they were rewarded with the ability to have children of their own. Usually midwives were midwives because they had no children, so now they were able to be fertile as well. God bless them. Verse number 22. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. And with that, we're going to leave it at here, because it's going to get super exciting, and I want to make sure that I film this for you next week. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to get into chapter 2. Hopefully we'll get into 3 and get into 4, and hopefully very soon I will finish my study of Enoch. We're not going to do a whole study on it because it's so big and it's going to push us back. I encourage you to read it on your own, but I am going to pull certain points out of there and give you some commentary and my views on it. I'm also going to relate it to some of the New Testament and things that's relatable in there. So if you want to see that stuff, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps a lot if you give me a thumbs up. Come back next week and join me for Exodus 2, 3, and hopefully 4. I also have my Armor of God video coming up, and I also have the Genesis video coming up. So just be patient with me. That's all going to get done, but this takes a lot of study, a lot of research, and I do want to be thorough. Right now I'm traveling because I'm with the girls that I camp with, which is something that I do on the side. If you need prayer requests, please leave it down below. I love to pray for you. And thank you so much for watching this week, and I hope that you understand about the innocence of children and babies, and you're starting to understand from the story of Exodus how God feels about the murder of children, how Satan has his purpose to try to destroy God's creation and God's children. And if you are a woman who is thinking of abortion, I hope that you watch this, or you share this with somebody who's thinking about that, so that they can change your mind. There's always the option of adoption, which is something that we're going to read about coming into Exodus, which is something that God would love for you to explore versus killing a child. I know, because I'm a mother of an adopted child. I've never had children, but I adopted my son from Romania. So if you are a woman that's already had an abortion, please let me pray for you. Just go into the comments and let me know, and I will pray for you for your salvation. God is here for you. All you have to do is accept Jesus into your heart. You have done something wrong in the past. You may have not known better. maybe you were convinced or told something differently. You were in a bad situation and you had to make that decision because you knew of no other. The world steered you the wrong way. So I'm here to tell you that you can accept Jesus in your heart, and he will cleanse you, he will forgive you, and you will have an eternal soul that will be with him at the end of your life. And that is a wonderful thing. And I pray for all of you. Thank you so much in the name of Jesus that you are here with me this week and that we are moving forward in the Bible. That gives me so much pleasure to read the Bible to you so that you have more understanding and meaning about it. And I will see you here next week as I stay here in this beautiful place and camp with my friends and with my muffin and with my missy girl who's up at the bunk right now. All right. Have a great week. Take care. Bye.